And we're back. We're going to take a look at 3.7. We're going to be solving percent problems, which sounds like totally different than what we've been doing, but we're going to solve it in a way that's using proportions. And so it's going to set up the way that we've been doing our cross multiplying in the last couple of days. So I'm going to set it up a little bit differently, of course, and hope that that one setup works for you all of the time. You're going to be answering questions about what percent is this and so on. So keep in mind that percent, when you talk about the percent of something, like what percent of the class has an A? Percent equals out of 100. And so what we're looking at is we're saying, like, what's the part of something compared to the whole, and what would that equal out of 100? What percent? So if you have a part of the class that has an A, then you would say that's how many people have an A out of the whole class. What percent out of 100 is that? So different examples, say that you have a pile of jelly beans and 5 of those jelly beans out of all 20 are red. And then you're trying to figure out what percent that is. Well, you're saying if I made this and expanded this so that my pile was 100 jelly beans instead of 20, how many of them would be red? What percent of them would be red if I kept them in that same ratio or proportion? So what I'm going to have you do is use this setup. And one of the key words a lot of times is for this to identify which thing is the whole is you'll see the word of. Because you say, like in this case right here, you'd say 5 of the 20. And so I always say you put the part over the of word. So you would a lot of times associate is with the top number. And here's what I mean by that. Like I would say 5 is what percent of 20. So the is kind of your buzzword to know you're talking about the part. Of is kind of the buzzword to know you're talking about the whole. So if we set it up as part over whole equals percent over 100, then we will always know 3 of the 4, and we can go ahead and use our cross multiplying that we learned in the last lesson to solve for any unknown pieces. So the lesson itself teaches it in several ways, and that to me gets confusing. So I want to show you how to use what I'm talking about in all of the problems. So if I think, okay, part, which is sometimes the is word, over whole, which is a lot of times has the word of by it, equals percent over 100. So that part is always going to be 100. And then this part, you're going to see on the problem that it says percent. It says percent when it's talking about that number, or you like literally will see that symbol. So as I read this, what the question is, what percent, here it comes, of 80 is 28? So looking at my problem, when it says what percent, that means the percent is the part you don't know. What I do know is that this is always 100, like it says right here, is what percent of 80 is 28. Also keep in mind the 28 has to be the part and the 80 has to be the whole, because the part has to be smaller than the whole. But again, the is usually your tip off that it's going to be the top number. And saying of usually is going to indicate that that's the number that's the whole. 28 is what percent of 80. So the thing we don't know is the percent. So if it makes it easier for you to understand, you can go ahead and write that as the X. Now I go back to what I knew how to do from yesterday, and I cross multiply. So I know that 28 times 100 is going to equal 80 times X. And now I just do what I did yesterday. So this will be 2,800 equals 80x. And if I grab my calculator, because I have to divide that 80 out of there now, and if I take 2,800 and divide it by 80, I end up with 35. And then remember, this was asking what percent. So I would say, okay, 28 out of 80 is 35%. So that's kind of how that sets up. Now, what about this one? Same type of question. What percent? And then of 90 is 36. So you're saying 36 is part of 90. What percent is it? Cross multiplying, 36 times 100 equals 90 times x. This will be 3600. This will be 90x. Getting that 90 out of there by division. If I just go 3600 divided by 90, then x is going to be 40%. Because it asked about the percent again. So this percent problem or part is the one that was missing. So if you have 90 of something, say you have 90 cookies and 36% of them have nuts in them, then 40% of those cookies have nuts in them. Okay, we are going to stick with our process. This is another way of doing it, and I don't want to make that confusing. So I'm just going to keep going to the problems as examples, and I'm going to set them up the same way because I think learning multiple ways of doing it can be kind of confusing. Maybe after we've practiced it for a while, but for right now, I'm sticking to my other way. So what percent of 24 is 98? So I always set up with my 100 here. I don't know the percent, so that part's going to be the x. What percent of 224 is 98? So that's the part over the whole. Cross multiplying, I'm going to have 98 times 100 equals 224 times x. So that's 9800 equals 225x. Dividing out the 225, I'm going to get something. Okay, so I got something kind of messy, which is totally fine. Hang on, I'm looking at something here that's super different than what I've got. Okay, so anyway, I got 43.56%. I kind of have to round that up because I got 0.55. All right. So there we go. That's kind of how I'm going to be setting these up. So let's keep looking. Now they're going to change the question. If you're looking at this question right here, they're giving me different parts. What number? So now they're not asking for the percent anymore. So I know this is a 100. What number is 75%? So the 75 has to go there because that's my percent. What number is 75% of 164? So there's my of number, there's my whole. So the thing I don't know is my is number. What number is 75% of that? And so I would just go ahead and do my cross multiplying. And I would say 164 times 75 equals, on this diagonal, 100 times x. So back to your calculator. 164 times 75 equals 100 dividing by 100. So x equals, these zeros are gone, 123. So what does that mean? That means that if you took it back up here, 123 out of 164 would be 75%, meaning 75 out of 100. And again, if it was on a test or IXL and you don't want to do it again, check. Does 164 times 75, that's 12,300. Does that equal these two? And when I multiply those, I get the same thing. So I know that this answer is going to be correct. Okay, so let's try a couple of these. What percent, so again, I'm looking at that as my unknown, of 76 is 57. So always 100 down here, don't know my percent. 57 is what percent of 76? So I've got my part over the whole. Doing my cross multiplication, I'm going to have 57 times 100, which turns into 5,700, equals 76 times x. So as you practice this, you're going to start to take little shortcuts. I'm going to divide that out of there. So I'm getting 75 here. So x equals 75, and it was asking what percent. So my answer is actually 75% when I go to write it. All right, here, what number is 35% of 80? So setting it up, 100 always goes here. The percent goes there. So since I know the percent, the 35 goes there. What number is, so I don't know that, of 80. So that's my total, my big whole number. So here's my setup. Cross multiply. And so I've got 100x on one diagonal and 80 times 35 on the other. So 80 times 35 gives me 2,800. Divide out 100. Now dividing out 100 is just gonna move that, over if you start to notice that. And here I don't put a percent on my answer because it's not asking what percent, it's saying what number. Well, the number is 28. All right. So again, here they show us a whole different way. I don't like learning 5 different ways because it gets me all confused. So I'm just gonna keep sticking with the one that's working for me. So now I have new information. I still know the 100 goes here. I still know that the percent, which they gave me this time, goes here. And of what number tells me that the of number is the one I don't know. So the x is down here because 21 is my is number. So 21 is part of some bigger number. It's 37.5% of it. So once I find the proper spot for all my numbers, then I'm just doing the same thing over again, and I'm able to go back to cross multiplying. 21 times 100 is 2,100, and that's going to equal 37.5x on this cross product. Dividing out my 37.5, I'm going to have 2,100 divided by 37.5, and I'm going to get 56. And I don't put a percent because it wasn't asking a percent. So it's saying if you had 21 out of 56, what percent is that? 37.5%, meaning 37 out of 100 would be in the same ratio as 21 out of 56. And if it was worth $1 million, you'd probably check this diagonal and make sure the product equaled this diagonal's product. All right. So like down here, it has all the different percents, the different kinds of problem types you can do, but it gives you a different way of how to do each one, and that concerns me. I like to have one way that works for all of them. So let's keep going with our same method on these last 2 examples, and then you'll know what you're doing, hopefully. 27 is 25% of what number? So again, the of is what I don't know. I know 27, and I know 25% goes there. You don't have to write the percent sign every time because the percent means out of 100. So I'm going to multiply those 2 and these 2 and then divide. And you should start to get really slick at that because you just keep multiplying and then divide, multiply and then divide. So it should be very repetitious. And when I get that answer, I get 108. So 27 out of 108 will equal 25%, meaning 25 out of 100. I can check that this product equals that product just to make sure. All right, last one. 78 is 150% of what number? Okay, 150% is more than 100. So I expect, I'm looking for 78 is 150% of what number? So I don't know the of number. I just know that 78 is 150% of it. Over here, see how this number is bigger than the bottom? that means that when I'm done, the 78 should also be the bigger number on this side. That's pretty backwards because with percent, we're usually less than 100%. But in this case, it's 150%. So the top will be bigger. It doesn't change how I do the problem. I'm going to take 78 and multiply it by 100. I'm going to take 150 and multiply it by x. And then I'm going to divide by that number with x. So 7800 divided by 150, I'm getting the answer of 52. And so that makes me think I probably did it right because the top is the bigger number. So if you were doing a test and it was worth 52 points and you got a 78, you got a whole bunch of extra credit. And so now you're at 150%. Wouldn't that be nice? So we're going to ignore this stuff down here because it's just the other methods. I'm going to just suggest that you stick with setting your problems up, zoom back to the top, using this method every time. Identify the percent. It'll be super easy. They'll either say percent or show you the sign. Always put the 100 under the percent, and then you've got a part and a whole. Usually you have to say of what number, and that's going to indicate that it's going on the bottom. And then the other number, whatever is, then you put it up on the top. Hopefully that helps you out. Tackle your 3-7 homework. We're going to work on percents for another day, but for today we're going to do it